Leani didn't like dealing with her sisters in general. However, this new crown princess, this one she truly didn't like. But having heard Jason's confession and the goodnight kiss they shared every night since allowed her to stay calm. And calm she needs to be, with her youngest sister and now crown princess arriving. Her only hope is that their preparations are done. But she has confidence in Jason's plan. A smile curled her lips as she thought about him and risked a glance over her shoulder at him. He was just behind her to her right. He was dressed in his dress greens, as he calls them. She took a second watching him. The stern look he had right now, the green eyes that had stared at her soul and smiled, those supple lips that were only ruined by a scar from the left upper side across his cheek. He had come every night for the past week to wish her good night and share a kiss, always holding her with gentle care. His eyes flickered to her, and in a low voice he spoke, "Princess, your sister is arriving." Leani snapped back to face the gate as it opened, and her youngest sister, at the age of 40, rode in on her mount, the saber-cats as Jason calls them. This sister was in Leani's opinion the worst, not due to age. Leani never cared for such things. It was her personality that made Leani hate this sister. "Sixes," her sister spoke as she slid off her mount and walked forward. "Oh, I suppose that nickname doesn't work now that you are the 12th. The tone was cheerful to mask the truth that she didn't want to be here. Leani smiled politely and gave her a gentle bow. "Crown Princess Yolum, it is a pleasure to have you here at our compound." She stood straight after the short greeting and waved a hand to Jason. "This is my ranger and sworn knight, Jason Coleman of the United States Rangers. He will be here to explain anything you may wish to know," she said in a polite tone while hiding as much of her emotions as possible. Her sister takes a cheeky grin, likely forgetting Leani's newly appointed position. "Oh, a summon as a sworn knight, then it can think and speak. I must say, sister, your summons have been lackluster as of late." Leani felt a rage at having Jason be called it, but kept it hidden and smiled softly. "Well, large monsters are fine in a pitched battle, but for adventuring they are impractical," she retorted calmly. "Shall we show you our progress? We will need 25 of your guards to join in," she adds with a wave to guide her towards the large field they have prepared. 25 of my guards against your 25 rookies armed with thundering sticks?" the Crown Princess says in an amused tone that shifts to serious. "I've been told not to allow you to point those thundersticks at me. I will not allow you to do the same to my knights." "Crown Princess, I have equipped our team with a special kind of weapon that works somewhat similarly to the real thing. Your knights will not lose their lives today unless they disregard the rules of this mock battle," Jason said in a calm and collected tone. "I can vouch for the safety of the items he speaks of," Leani adds as she remembers using one not too long ago. The paint battle staff was different from what he had been teaching the recruits to use, but they found it far easier to handle. "Well then, if any die, then you shall take the blame?" her sister asked pointedly, a trap laid before their eyes. "Provided they heeded our instructions, then yes. However, if they disregard them, we are not at fault," Leani said back in a calm tone. They walk to the large open field, and Jason walks over to some prepared boxes and opens them. Leani took her chance and looked at her sister. "Pick your knights, 25, and they will not need their helmets." The Crown Princess called up her best but newest, believing she held the advantage, Jason's short instructions on the use and safety of the face masks he was providing the selected knights, and then guided the rest of the onlookers to a raised platform overlooking the field. Pulling out his sidearm, he looked to Leani and fired a flare high into the air, signaling the start of the mock battle. As expected, the knights rushed to the highest hill on the field and took up a box formation, waiting for Leani's army to appear. And appeared they did. Riding onto the field, the 5 war carriages moved in perfect unison, pulling up and parking inside the weapons range of the rookies. The knights quickly shifted to meet any foolhardy charge. But the rookies got into a loose formation similar to those of archers and leveled their weapons at the knights, and began to fire, painting the knights from head to toe in red paint, leaving no point aside from the uncoated shield arm. "Jason, that is enough. I think we have proven our tactics. Let's move on to the actual weapons demonstration," Leani said after 10 minutes of her newly forming army recoloring her sister's knights. "What?" Her sister looked confused. Your army, she said sarcastically, just stood there and fired. My knights would have been able to stop all ranged attacks with magic. Leani smiled at her sister, knowing the truth of Jason's weapons and how magic can't stop them. Crown Princess, I assure you that if this were a real battle, your knights would be dead. But if you need proof of my words, then come with me to the weapons demonstration. Her sister eyed her for a few seconds, trying to read her expression, but sighed. Very well, sister. I will entertain this claim until after the weapons demonstration. She waved her hand, getting a signal horn to blare, announcing the end of the mock battle and the victory to be decided later. However, her 25 newly painted knights were less than happy to be denied a battle, and most so when cleansing magic didn't remove the paint from their armor and clothes. Leani's rookies, however, quickly and efficiently loaded back into the war carriages and vanished back into the tree line of the field, leaving her sister and her knights visibly confused. Do your soldiers lack etiquette? Is that why they are not following us? Her sister asked as they started the short walk to the firing range. Her voice oozed with confidence at a fault in Leani's army. No, they are simply returning the war carriages to where we store them. It's a 20-minute ride at full tilt on an Alathu, Leani said back, getting her sister and her escort to stop dead in their tracks. And how far did they come for the mock battle? Surely they were nearby at the start, one of the knights asked out of turn, but none corrected her. Leani smiled politely and shook her head. They traveled that distance when my ranger fired the signal flare, and they now travel it back before getting a larger carriage to arrive here again, hopefully just as Jason finishes explaining the weapons. Her sister and knights again started moving, many more than confused, while others looking angered. Not that it would be uncommon. An Alethu at full tilt going for 20 minutes is a difficult ride even for the best knights. But in the war carriages, it is a fast and somewhat comfortable endeavor. As they got to the firing range, Leani gestured to a table where they had set up more than enough headphones to help against the sounds of the weapons being demonstrated. This will help each of you withstand the sound of the weapons fire. All of them are linked by magic from Jason's world, so conversation can happen, but I ask you all to refrain from speaking unless it is to ask a question. Her sister and her knights each took one and put them on, following Leani's example on how to properly wear them. Please follow me, Jason. Are you ready? She spoke into her microphone. All the assembled looked shocked that they could hear her, even as the world was closed off from them. Yes, Princess, I have finished checking the weapons, and the ranger is now safe for you all to enter. Jason's disembodied voice rang in their ears. Leani smiled and led them down into the long and recessed firing range. Jason was standing at a table nearby, a small collection of the basic weapons each soldier of her army would be expected to know and operate. Each knight settled into a provided bench on the rising slope behind the two princesses, who settled themselves into thrones. Leani's, of course, less ornate or comfortable. Jason picked up the main weapon of the army and held it like he did when explaining it to the recruits. This is a Mark 16 Scar L. It is the standard issue weapon of this army. It fires 0.218-inch metal bullets at a muzzle speed of 956.66 yards a second with a range of 546.80 yards. Leani had to double her efforts to suppress her joy as a few people behind her fainted and her sister's hair began to noticeably and fearfully shake against her braid. The next part is in a week. Hopefully. Wait! The crown princess bellowed louder than needed with the microphone. Are you telling me that his weapons, the ones that your soldiers will be equipped with, can kill at over 200 yards, and it closes that distance in the blink of an eye? She asked, her 4 eyes wide in panic as she and her youth forgot all lessons of discretion. Leani nodded to Jason to explain. If the shooter is skilled enough to do so, yes, he said in a calm and clear tone. However, we are drilling in a 2-tap system where each soldier fires 2 bullets at their target, increasing the likelihood of a kill. Jason, please continue with the explanations. Our troops will arrive soon, Leani encouraged, trying to move the explanations along so they could get to what she and Jason agreed was the fun part. He smiled and continued with his explanation. As mentioned, this has an effective range of 546.80 yards and can fire 625 rounds per minute. However, every soldier will only be equipped with 7 boxes of 30 rounds, giving them 210 rounds to use before they need to rearm. He picked up one of the boxes that carried the bullets and loaded it. Aiming at a target behind him, he fired in rapid succession until he fired all 30 rounds. As you can see, I not only hit a target but landed all my shots in a tight group, maximizing the kill potential of the weapon. These skills have already been learned by our 25 recruits. He put the weapon back down on the table after checking if it was safe to do so. Any questions? The few knights that passed out lost the support of others, as many in the escort went pale. The newly painted knights in particular seemed to have seen death greet them in person. The crown princess gained her composure first and smiled with a giggle. "Oh, sister, you had me," she said with all the arrogance of a princess unaware of Jason. "This weapon is impressive and frightening, but barrier magic will block it easily for sure, and only a concentrated fire will break those barriers." "Oh, don't worry, sister. I plan to address your thoughts later in the demonstration," Leani said back with a sweet and sisterly tone before looking at Jason and gesturing. "Jason, please move on to the next weapon." "Right, the next piece is the standard sidearm." He picked up a smaller handheld weapon, again presenting it for everyone to see. This is a Glock 19. It is chambered in .40 S and W, with an effective range of 54.68 yards. A muzzle speed of 316.66 yards a second. It carries 17 rounds in its box, and in the hands of our soldiers, it will be their weapon of choice for fighting in the tight confines of a city. He proceeded to load the weapon and fire at a target in his effective range, again showing a mastery of the weapon, before checking it was safe to place back on the table. Any questions? Just then, a massive carriage rolled up, and the recruits disembarked, quickly assembling and saluting the princesses. Leani quickly saluted back and gestured to Jason to move on. "Kits on, full fire drill in effect, Vinin, cold eye pulley, go get our special targets ready." Jason barked at the recruits, setting them into motion. "Sister, is that—" The crown princess started, but lost her words as the 3 designated recruits set up targets with permanent barrier spells woven into the armor the recruits placed on mannequins. "Yes, they are, sister. Cost us a good amount of gold to buy them for this demonstration," Leani said back calmly. "Would you care to inspect them before we begin, to verify their authenticity?" The crown princess looked stunned by the idea of looking at them up close, much less stepping out to a killing field, but she pointed at 2 knights. "Verify that those armors are properly enchanted." "All troops stand by, weapons safe," Leani said into her mic, getting her recruits to immediately check their weapons were unloaded and that the firing range was safe for the 2 knights to move across it. Their inspection was quick but thorough as they each took a turn to swing at the armor, their swords glancing at the mana barrier the armor made. Before they quickly returned to the princesses, the senior one spoke quickly. "The armor is both authentic and high quality. We believe each is easily worth at least 10 gold coins, your majesties." "Sister, did you spend 70 gold on a weapons demonstration?" the crown princess asked, a small amused smile curling her lips. "Let me guess the 7 lucky soldiers are your best shots too?" Leani smiled politely and spoke in a meaningful tone. "Actually, we gave them to our 7 worst shots, the 7 that have yet to reach the hit efficiency to pass their recruitment and basic training phase." The pregnant silence for her sister and knight still conscious was deafening. If it mattered, however, Jason continued with the preparation and broke the dread that lingered. "At the ready," he said once all the recruits were lined up in front of their targets, weapons pointed down and away from any side for the 250-yard expanse of dirt. "Take aim," he ordered, getting the recruits to raise their weapons and train them at their respective targets, their stances perfectly held to counter the recoil of the weapon. 2 boxes, fire at will," he said, the sudden eruption of thunderclaps ringing like the disorganized hammering of 100 drums. But Leani didn't care, as the look of terror and bated breaths of those watching was priceless. The knights that had faced the recruits in the mock battle began frantically trying to remember how many times they each were hit and where. Those who hadn't been in the mock battle seemed to be divided between fainting and hyperventilating in dread. But her sister's face stole the show for Leani. Her royal training in hiding her emotions shattered as she watched on in horror, her understandings of warfare and combat uprooted by a force she couldn't combat or control, her past 30 years of work to be the second princess paling in the truth of what Leani was building. Because of the targets, each one, even those with the enchanted armor, was being ripped apart piece by deafening piece. No metal to stop the bullets, no spell to block the impacts, no nimbleness quick enough to dodge the attack. "Clear weapons, safety's on," Jason ordered after the last round was fired and each recruit had fired the 60 rounds at their target. Leani smiled politely at her sister, hiding her feelings perfectly as she had become accustomed to the display of devastation her army's weapons bring. "So, Crown Princess Yalem, is our starting construction of this army sufficient to meet your requirements for the war?" The Crown Princess forces a calm smile. "Yes. Your fighting force is certainly impressive." "Well, it is not over yet. Please watch carefully as Jason demonstrates the trump card of the army," Leani says with a polite smile before nodding to Jason. "Grenadiers ready, 1 round." Jason ordered as 5 of the recruits loaded something into their larger weapons. "Fire!" The 5 recruits' weapons let out a soft tonk sound before the far end of the firing range exploded in 5 small plumes of dust as Jason turned to the audience. That was the M203 explosive spell launcher. It fires a 1.574-inch projectile to a max range of 437 yards and has an effective kill zone of 196.85 inches. 1 in every 5 of our soldiers will be equipped with this to help deal with enemy monsters and creatures. Leani turns and looks at her sister like she didn't just show her the end of chivalry and smiles politely. "Crown Princess, this completes our demonstration. You are welcome to rest here a bit while your knights wake up," she says with a wave to the escort, having all passed out in fear or shock, some still awake but catatonic in the thoughts of fighting her army.